Welcome to a new episode of the 905er. My name is Joel McLeod.
I'm Roland Tanner.
And before we get started, I would just like to say to our listeners, if you've been enjoying the work that we've done this week on the 905er in covering our stories on the HCDSB pride flag issue or motion, please consider joining our Patreon and supporting us full-time. Your help would be greatly appreciated and would go a long way to helping us continue to do this kind of story. Well, as you may have guessed, yes, this is what we're talking about today, is the HCDSB pride flag fiasco. And joining us today is a special guest. We're lucky to have with us Dr. Alex Power, who presented at the board meeting on Tuesday. We invited her on because she was there. She was in the thick of it, and we wanted to get her opinion on the fact that she took time to delegate, to present her argument, to present her case, and then the board decided to just end the meeting. Dr. Power, why don't you share for us what your perspective is on that the board decided to end their meeting without actually really debating your presentation or any of the other delegate presentations for that matter?
Well, thank you so much, guys, for having me on today. I think my response was a little bit of shock initially. I actually didn't know that they could do that. I attended the meeting in good faith. I attended the meeting not because of any political issues or any affiliations. I did it because this is a really important issue that has been brought forward by the students and by the staff of HCDSB schools. So I attended the meeting with a good faith belief that this was going to be our time to delegate, our time to have these discussions brought forward, and that we would finally get an answer to our plea. And I really thought that right now it is so important that this issue was decided upon, and I was very hopeful that it would be a yes, because I don't know if anybody has noticed, but we've been in a COVID pandemic for the last year. And everyone is feeling very, very isolated and very sad. And for our LGBTQ plus youth, that isolation just puts them further and further in the closet. And I want them to know that they have a safe space when they eventually get back to schools. Please, hopefully it happens. So I really thought that this was such an important decision at such a critical time. So I was really sad and disappointed.
I should just point out to our listeners, you did delegate. You delegated in favor of raising the pride flag at HCDSB schools. I've attended a number of board meetings myself. They have extended board meetings. Now how this went down, in case you weren't watching, at 10 o'clock in the HCDSB bylaws, the meeting ends unless a 2/3 majority vote to extend the meeting, and it's usually for about half an hour, and then at the end of that half hour they can vote to extend it again, and they keep doing that until presumably the agenda has been completed. They've gone through all the motions on the agenda. This time at 10 o'clock, 4 of the trustees just said, no, we're done. We're going home. I've never actually seen that happen where they just canceled the meeting. I found it to be shocking and quite very much. I wrote about this. I found it to be cowardly. We knew that this was a contentious debate. It was a highly emotional for both sides, understandably, but unfortunately, like this is what they were elected to do, to make these decisions, and to kind of just cowardly just shy away and back out the kind of the side door. It was just sad. I really don't have any other way to phrase it. Roland, what do you think?
Well, it's just going to I mean, the point you raised in your article was that the impression you got was that certainly 4 of the trustees really don't want to discuss this issue because it's embarrassing for them, because they're gonna one suspects they want to make a decision that will not be popular with the wider population. Dr. Power, was that kind of the impression you got? I mean, with your delegation. Now, I have to apologise to listeners. I didn't watch the session last night. I hope to catch up with a bit of it today. I had a meeting last night. Had a meeting today as well. One way or the other, I'm the least informed person in this podcast today. With your delegation, though, Dr. Power, were you asked questions? I mean, I heard there was quite a few fairly inquisitorial kind of questions put by trustees to the delegates. Was that your experience?
Yes. So my understanding was that questions were meant to clarify on the points of the delegation. However, that was not necessarily the experience that we had with the questions, not only for myself, but also when listening to the questions posed to other delegates. And I also need to take this opportunity that for listeners, there was a unequal opportunity. And I want to bring forth the point when Trustee Kelly, one of the student trustees, she posed a brilliant question to the last delegate who was against raising the pride flag. And she questioned why we're allowed to take, direct scriptures against those who identify as LGBTQ out of the Bible, but we do not take direct scriptures when we speak about racism, which is listed in the Bible as well. And a point of order was raised by Trustee Antomasi, and it was approved by Trustee or by the chair. And I was quite sad and quite disappointed by the director's decision, because there was a lot of questions posed to me and posed to other trustees that were clarifying points in the delegation, whereas this was a very good question that was linked very tightly to the delegation that was made. So even in the questions that were posed, and there was many that were lengthy, I didn't feel like there was necessarily a fear battlefield to start with.
It's something I'm familiar with from having delegated at council meetings and things. Very often, questions to delegates are they're obliged to put them as questions because that's the rules of procedure, but they're often statements with a question mark at the end. I have a habit on this podcast of asking questions that I forget to put a question mark on the end. It's the same thing, people are making points and they're not really interested in your answer. And I think there's two issues here, really, because there's the issue at stake, which was showing solidarity for LGBT plus students or not. And then there's this issue of how, the phrase you used was such a sort of perfect choice of you turn up in good faith. Most people's idea of a good night out or a good night on Zoom is not to be at a town hall meeting or to delegate to a council or to a board. It's, for most people, quite intimidating. It's you do it because you feel passionately about something enough to get up and to speak. And then to have these kind of procedural things put in your way, it's really kind of a slap in the face to citizens. And I think it's one of the big problems with the way our political processes work, particularly at municipal level, that when people do choose to get involved and to get engaged, as that phrase is often bandied around is, you're almost punished for doing so. Rather than feeling welcome, and this is fantastic, you're getting involved in the democratic life of the region where you live. Thank you for coming out. This is terrific. Instead, you're met with this kind of hostile, deliberately or accidentally hostile kind of atmosphere of someone using the procedures to make their statement rather than listening to what you're saying, and then failing to make that decision. Was there any explanation made by the trustees as to why they weren't extending the meeting? Was there any notification given to you about when this issue will be discussed again, whether it will be discussed again, why they couldn't come back on Wednesday morning to finish the business up? Was there anything like that made, or was it simply, no, we're over, it's done, thanks very much?
So it was a no, we're over, we're done. Thanks very much. But the kick in the pants here, Roland, is that it means we start all over again. So when this comes up in 2 weeks, or if they call an emergency meeting, new delegations will happen. New letters of support should and will be put in place. New debate or questions will be posed. There is the possibility that they will again use this question period as a filibuster, which is what I realized after the fact happened. And I did not know that was what was happening. I did not know that there was a strategy in place. But after the fact, I certainly feel as if the number of questions and the length of the questions were used to fill that space, because they knew if they ended the meeting at 10 o'clock, we start right on over again. And if that isn't the actual case, which maybe I'm misreading it, I would love to have that conversation with several of the trustees.
I think it's a fair point to make. Sorry, Joel. I think it's a fair point to make that that's certainly the impression that's being given. Whether it's true or not, it hardly matters. They've just taken those 200 people who, one way or the other, were involved in delegating on this issue, and kind of turned them away from the political process by acting in this way. And that's the last thing that they should ever want to do. Sorry, Joel, go ahead.
Well, kind of touching on that note, it's, it kind of summing up that, I mean, Dr. Power, you and I'm going to say your friend, it was Michaela Bodner and her daughter that you were delegating with. You, as you said, you went on there in good faith. You thought it was a chance to make your case, your argument to the board, and the board would either say, "Thank you for your words. We'll add it to our deliberations." I've never seen a meeting that they didn't even approve the agenda. Like, this was all done before even the approving of the agenda, or the minutes of the previous meeting. This wasn't like, oh, this was in the middle of a meeting and they didn't get any work done. It was clear either they lost control of the meeting, which is a possibility, or two, that this was just, as you said, it was a filibuster run on a question. I mean, having come out of it on the other side, Dr. Power, what's your sense of the process? Are you confident? Are you encouraged to keep going at it, or are you a bit more jaded coming off on this side of the of what happened last night?
So I will never allow someone's use of politics or procedure to silence me or to silence the cause of the LGBTQ youth. They have stoked the flames that we needed underneath us. I will keep fighting this fight. Does it make me trust that they are there with their best interests or the students' best interests? No. They've lost trust, but they haven't just lost my trust. I think they've lost the trust of numerous people, because we are there debating on something that is about the students, and yet the questions they're asking are on our references, right? The references were listed. We had a big bibliography, and they are there, and questioning these very public references. So while it was incredibly frustrating and incredibly saddening, it will not stop me, because I am determined to find a solution, and a positive solution, and to continue to advocate for these students. And I recognize that I have that privilege, because I don't have skin in this game, right? I'm not a teacher who's at risk of losing my job. I'm not part of the LGBTQ community, right? I can put my voice out there and speak it firmly and speak it loudly, because I have that privilege, and I'm not going to let these politics silence me on that.
What does it say to you that right now in the province of Ontario, by my recollection, there's only one Catholic school board who's opting to raise the pride flag, and that's Thunder Bay Catholic school board. What does it say in this province that only the one board a Catholic board is willing to do this? Do you think?
so many things, but it says to me that we are allowing fear to dictate our decisions. The Catholic board puts themselves forward as a board of love and inclusivity. But the moment that you choose to exclude one group because they make you feel uncomfortable, it says a lot more about who you are than they are. And I want to go back to the point by the last delegate last night, and again, she was against the raising of the flag, and she was insinuating that somehow by showing this flag that we will be encouraging homosexual behaviors. And I'm pretty sure that any of us can go to Thunder Bay and do a survey before they started raising flags and after they started raising flags, and the amount of homosexuals will not have changed, right? We will not change someone's intrinsic sexual orientation or intrinsic gender identity by raising a flag. Another point that was raised is that this is such a small symbol. Why do this? What's the purpose? My response to that, if it's such a small symbol and it means so much to another group, why not? Right? So I think that it means that we need to put on our big girl pants and our big boy pants, and we need to get those flags up into the sky.
It's just slightly changing the direction of the question, I guess. But do you think ultimately it's any of the regional school board's business? I mean, shouldn't this? It's legal in Canada to be gay. The pride flag is the pride flag. It's a internationally recognized symbol of the LGBTQ plus communities. It's a legal flag. It's just it's a good thing. I think most people recognize. Why should even a group of admittedly elected but fairly minor government functionaries be discussing this subject, which is so much bigger than a school board?
I raised that question myself, and I raised that question with one of the trustees who I had the opportunity to speak to before the meeting, and we referenced together Mr. Pierre Trudeau's comment. Right, the government does not have a place in the bedroom of the nation. Well, guess what? The trustees are not at any point requesting to police the sexual activities of their heterosexual students, and they have no business doing so for their homosexual or asexual or bisexual or any sexual students either. It is not the role of a school board to be policing the sexuality of the children in their care. It is not appropriate, and it actually borders on highly inappropriate.
And it ultimately comes back to this kind of grey area, I feel anyway, that the Catholic school boards live in, that we have separation of church and state in all regards, apart from this one area. And I just don't know that there's ever a fix to this. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I mean, I put the same question to Deirdre Pike at the weekend, and I appreciate that for people within the Catholic faith, it's a not as clear cut as it may seem to me as someone who's not grown up within that system.
I can tell you what does happen. Sorry, I'm from Newfoundland, and we don't have a Catholic school system anymore. Right? When I was in grade 8, the separation between religious and public school systems got removed for just that reason. Right? So that is what happens if a school board cannot keep up with modern thoughts and societal norms.
But on that note, two things. One, I believe that in Canada, Ontario and Alberta are the only provinces that actually have a publicly funded separate school system. If I have my facts wrong, I'm open to somebody proving me wrong. But I believe right now, every province, save for Alberta and Ontario, it's just one publicly funded school system. So the notion that, we can't do anything about it, not true. And the second point, today, looking at the 905ers social media feed, there is a lot of people who question just that. Why do we have a separate Catholic system. If the Catholic boards cannot accept that the LGBTQ community exists, it is inside their schools, they want to feel accepted, and if the board is not willing to make the gestures to welcome them in, there's a question of, is it compatible with a modern 21st century democracy? I don't have a question for that. It's just, this is the debate that we're going down. It's, and the fact is, I don't know if the HCDSB trustees think that this is happening in a bubble. It is not. The eyes of the province are on Halton right now, on the Halton Catholic School Board. They're judging you. They're judging you on the failure to do anything on Tuesday night, and they're going to judge you on what you do next. Just putting it out there.
It seems to me, it seems to me that if the Catholic school boards wish to survive, they need to accept that on issues such as this, they have no jurisdiction. They should not be involved in it. You can have a Catholic school and you can teach Catholicism within that school, or Christianity, Christian principles, under the law as it stands today. But when it comes to this kind of public statement that you are making as an employee of the government of Ontario, paid for by taxpayers' money, I just can't see that they have any business going anywhere near this with a barge pole. That's kind of taking out of the equation the whole issue of whether this is actually something that within the Christian and Catholic faith is the anti side of the equation seems, even within Catholicism, to be less mainstream than it once was when we're looking at statements from the current Pope, who that seem reasonably progressive.
Well, the fact is, and Dr. Power, you might have the data to back me up on this, or I might be completely wrong. My take is the majority of Catholics are very progressive on this front. Not the church hierarchy, not the bureaucracy, but actual on the ground Catholics. The number of Catholic teachers who wrote in to support their students, or Catholic parents of children who identify as LGBTQ, are very supportive of this. And they themselves have said they interpret the teachings of Christ to that this is part of their calling. They can't. This is part of their Christianity. And the debate is raging very much in the church over this. And I would argue it's not fair that the church is still wrestling with this to say that the argument is final, and therefore our schools must reflect this. It's unfair to leave kids' health up for a debate this way.
I think it's also just worth highlighting again to anybody who hasn't been following this story that it wasn't just about the flag. It was also about making a visual statement, if you like, putting up a poster in every classroom saying that a classroom is a safe space for everybody, whatever your gender identity, whatever your sexuality.
And I think. Sorry, Dr. Power, I want you to weigh in on that, because I know in your practice you deal with, you were telling me just off camera, your primary focus as a doctor is with teen sexual health, and just from your professional opinion and expertise, what would seeing a poster with that this school is a safe place, the pride flag waving on the flagpole as you walk into your school's doors, what would that do for a teen who identifies with the LGBTQ community?
So just to clarify, I do student health, so I work mainly at a university. So I'm seeing kids who have left either the public or the Catholic system, or from international students. That's one of the main parts of my job. And for students who identify as LGBTQ, we do know that there are, for all students, that there are multiple social determinants of mental health. Okay. And we know that inclusivity and a sense of belonging at home and at school, that has been documented by the Canadian Mental Health Association, at school is a huge social determinant of mental health. I will then back that up even further by talking about, and you can see this data on the eGale Canada website. They do a lot of fantastic research. And we know that our LGBTQ youth have much higher rates of physical assault and verbal assault. And we know that students who have experienced bullying do much better if they have a safe place to go. So one of the conversations that I brought up that Mr. DeRosa had actually talked to me last night, and one of the questions was, well, I won't be there, you won't be there after the fact. How do we teach them to stand up for themselves? And the point I made then, and I think it's a very important one, is the concept of resilience. And it's something I talk to my students about all the time, and it's something that we can practice on a day-to-day basis. It's the concept that when you fall down, the ability to come back up. Well, if someone has beaten you down for years, you cannot build resilience because you are merely trying to survive or you're trying to get out of this world, right? Those are the options, survival or death, right? Not building your mental health or your resilience capacity for failure. So it's not until we have a safe place for these students to be able to be respected and heard, to feel loved and feel like they belong, that we can actually give them that toolkit so that they're not in their 20s and their 30s struggling with self-esteem issues and mental health issues, or feelings of self-harm or self-questioning. And I think that's a really important message. And I want to bring back to another delegation last night by, it was a priest and a father. And he, it was commented by one of the trustees that, well, most bullies back down. And that's not true. If bully sees a target that is not protected, that is who they're going to go after again and again and again, because bullies are cowards and they're going to go for the weak link. And this father commented that, well, the stories that we've heard, they're all anecdotal. We don't have the data. And to which one of the other trustees questioned and said, oh, you've been given the data tonight, right, by the first delegation. But how can we believe that data is scientific, right? So when you are telling these young people that their anecdotes are red herrings, why do you think that they would feel safe going to teachers or administrators, right? So that is why I think this symbol is so important, because I don't want to have to clean up the mess of the Halton Catholic District School Board for the rest of my life.
The fact that we're having this debate at all, the fact that we have to debate the worth of waving the pride flag outside schools, is this itself causing damage, do you think, to the LGBTQ kids who are already attending the HCDSB schools?
I can only simply phrase it as a question. What message do you think these kids got last night when the adults in the room didn't have the decency to say, gosh, yes, our kids need this? When they could sit there and question the statistics that were given, when they can sit there and question the validity and veracity of the personal accounts that were given, it tells them, shut up and close that door tighter. Put the padlocks on. You are safer in this room by yourself than out in that school.
And it's completely obscene to question. If you want data on bullying of LGBT children, speak to any LGBT person who's been born within the last 200 years or before that, anywhere in the world, and you will have those same stories of bullying. Either that's the norm, not the exception to the rule. Hopefully today there are students who go through school with supportive environments, but certainly before about 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, that simply was not a situation that existed for anybody. I mean, I'm not quite as old as Methuselah, but when I went to school, if anybody had said I'm gay, their life would have been a living hell. The children who had any kind of, if they were slightly effeminate, if they were a boy or whatever, they got picked on anyway, whether they were gay or not. for someone to question that and to say, well, do we have the scientific data? It's like this was the universal experience of people growing up, going through puberty, and finding or questioning their sexuality or whatever during the entirety of history. It's just such an absurd point for someone to have made.
And the worst part of it was we actually had a alumnus on delegating last night who identifies in the LGBTQ community and shared her personal stories of discrimination and bullying that she had endured during her years at a HCDSB school. She was there and she shared those stories, and yet it could still be questioned to her face.
You're referencing Neve Shallow, who we had on the podcast before. We saw her delegate. She was very compelling, but we knew that when we after we interviewed her. We're coming up on our time limit here, but I just want to ask one final question to you, and this is your opinion. I have the thought that every now and again, organizations or groups of people are presented with an opportunity to rise to the occasion and take a stand and make their mark in their communities. I think last night was one of those occasions for the Halton Catholic District School Board trustees, and I'm wondering, Dr. Power, in your mind, did the HCDSB drop the ball in that regard?
100% they dropped the ball. The question is, what do they want their legacy to be? Because if they can't make the right choices, it will only be a legacy because they will cease to exist, right? So what do they want their legacy to be? Do they want their legacy to be a statement of inclusion and love and to be on the forefront of Ontario's ability to accept everyone the way they were made by God, or whatever your belief system may be? Or do they want to be remembered as an organization that spewed hate and who spewed poison towards their own community and practitioners? And I think that is the question that the trustees now have in front of them. And they have a very small amount of time to change that perception. And I really hope that they take this time to look inside of themselves and recognize that when they signed up as trustees, they didn't sign up to put their own self-beliefs or interests first. In fact, many of them ran with their number one priority being student well-being. Well, the students have asked for this. The teachers who see these students every day have asked for this. The mental health professionals are asking for this. Right? So they have an opportunity here to create a new chapter and a new message, but they have to do it really quickly.
Well, I think that's the note we're going to end this episode off on. Dr. Alex Power, thank you for coming on and sharing your experience with us. And this is a story that we'll be following when the HCDSB convenes again to debate whether or not to fly the pride flag over their schools. Thank you very much, everyone, and we will talk with you next Tuesday. That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.